Now, in this example we are looking at page 135, and this is in chapter 9. This is report generation with a page break. Now, again, report writing seems to be, I think in my estimation anyway, for me, how's that? It's one of the least exciting things to talk about, but again, it's one of those things that gets you the most paid, and that's in any industry. Now, I really like this example. Again, this is 9.2 on 135. I really like this example because this includes, unbeknownst maybe to the casual observer, this includes here a reverse engineering expedition, right? Nobody sits down behind a block of code and works their way through what is the report going to look like. It's the other way around. We sit here and we figure out what we need the report to look like, right? So all of these pieces here are before we go into the coding expedition, we do a little bit of reverse engineering. We come in through here and say, what are we going to need to know as far as what the next reader in the chain is going to need. So clearly we're going to need a heading, right? So clearly we're going to need a date. So clearly we're going to need to know the customer numbers. We're going to have pieces of data that we give to the reader that are going to let them know exactly what it is, those little snippets of data it is that we're printing mean to them. So we need to figure out what the report looks like before we get to coding the report, so that when we get through and actually deliver the report, we actually have something that makes a little bit of sense to the reader. Now, the additional thing here to consider is the page break. Now, what I'm asking you is not a rhetorical question. This is a question that has an answer, and this answer is going to be dependent on the situation you're in. But how many lines go on a page? There's a wide array of ways we can answer that, right? So if we're looking at this page here, it seems as though our report has 10 lines or thereabout, and that's all well and good. But how about on a piece of actual paper? So here, if this is your book has a finite number of lines on every page that you can print on. Otherwise, you're going to continue to print down below the bottom margins of your page, and parts of your data are never going to be conveyed to the reader, right? If I am going to have this report go to a tablet, am I going to have a mechanism baked in so that the user can, fluidly scroll up and down through what's happening there? I don't know, but you need to when you go through and you develop your solutions for these. So I'm going to give this piece away right now. Is we need to have a max detail line, and that is right here in the initialize variable fields. That max detail line is essentially suggesting it's the maximum number of lines that we can include here on whatever our destination source is. So if it's paper, it's paper. If it's a small tablet, it's a small tablet. Is a phone the same as a tablet? No, not really, right? The display there has to be different. If it is a piece of legal paper, that's going to be different. So let your destination help guide you as to how many lines it is that you can print on a page, whatever that page is going to end up being. And that's going to have an impact on, you giving the impression to the reader that this was tailored specifically for me. And whatever you do to tailor, your algorithm, whatever you do to tailor your displays, whatever you do to tailor your reports, that all has a positive impact on how it is the reader, the next developer in the chain, or the end user are going to positively interact with your program or your process, your design. So here in the solution algorithm, we'll start here with the main line, and we'll just highlight some of the new bits of consideration in here. Again, from within our main line, this is nothing that we haven't seen before. The big takeaway here is that we are calling to these subordinate modules. When you're actually writing your code, this is the way we need to have things broken up. You are going to specify what your mainline algorithm is, and you do that simply with the title mainline. Now, we aren't necessarily skipping over naming our program, right? So print report program is the name of our program here, and we do still have to include that. Structurally, this is literally structurally later. We would list out our subordinate modules, and we would essentially name them in the same way we would our mainline program, right? So notice one thing of importance here. Where I have a call to, now again, a call is a reference to a subordinate module that is going to force that subordinate module to run. So where I have a call here to initialize variable fields, I'm making a call down here to initialize variable fields, and you'll notice that the both of them are spelled the same. They have the same underscore nomenclature, and that is important. If I simply called it initialize variable field, and up here in my mainline algorithm, I called it initialize variable fields, those are not the same subordinate modules. One of the things that I am going to do when I go through and evaluate your work is I'm going to make sure that the module that you are calling and the module that is called have the same name. And the reason I do that is because in a compile and runtime environment, that's exactly what has to happen. So even something to you as a casual reader would be immaterial, right? A lowercase I in initialize variable fields. That's a different program module now, and that is not okay. So make sure that you have a match, right? You are matching your subordinate module names here and subordinate module names here so that they are the same. Here in your main line, you are actually showing us this time that it's the main line because we are adding these subordinate modules. And literally later, structurally, you add those subordinate modules so that we can read the mainline algorithm first, and here we check for logic. Then we come down here to the subordinate modules and we check each of these individually to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So let's look at kind of concrete sequentially what's happening here inside of print report program, right? So first things first, we're going to initialize variable fields. So that's going to send us down here to our first subordinate module, initialize variable fields. Again, we are going to follow through here line by line, and that is all. Set accumulators to 0, so really this is squint at it design here. So if we have any counters, that's what an accumulator is. It is a counter, customer count, record count, balance over 1,000 count, whatever the case may be. We're going to set all of those to 0. We're going to set our page count to 0. So essentially every time this initializes run, everything goes back to 0. We're going to set our line count to 0. And again, our max detail lines to required value. So that essentially says we are setting out a condition where wherever our destination is for our report is going to look as though it was destined for that kind of destination. So paper or tablet or desktop or whatever the case may be. Next, we're going to come to print page headings, and that's going to send us down here to subordinate module number 2. And you'll notice print page headings in our mainline algorithm and print page headings in our subordinate algorithm are exactly the same. So they have that same underscore nomenclature, and that's something I would expect you to follow here as well. Here in print page headings, it's going to do whatever it is that we need it to do. Increment the page count, print the main line headings, print column heading lines, yada, yada, yada. What does all that mean? It's going to go through and print up the things that we see happening in here. So as we continue on down here, read first record. This here on line number 3. And again, you'll notice it is not a module call because it does not have the underscore nomenclature. Do while more records exist. That structure does not change any from the do while structure we've been using in previous chapters. Here, this if statement works in exactly the same way it does in previous chapters. We are simply saying as long as line count is less than max detail lines, you can keep printing on this page. What would the else be? Print on another page maybe. So how are we going to find out where that is? Well, if we come to our print detail lines, and you'll see we are incrementing here our line count, right? So that means from within print detail line, we essentially have what should be another subordinate module, which is increment line count, right? Because this is otherwise a module that is print detail line and increment line count. So in more perfect modular design, this increment line count would really be a call to another different subordinate module, but they're just trying to get through here. The print page headings, that's another one we've already seen. So you'll notice that print page headings here on line number 7 and here on line number 2 is the exact same print page headings. That's the whole benefit to modular design here, is we've got print page headings here and print page headings here are duplicates, or otherwise we would have to make rather duplicates of these lines here, and that's entirely too risky. That exposes us to entirely too much error, essentially. So by creating these subordinate algorithms as subordinate algorithms, we can make a call here to print page headings, and we can do this as many times, one here and one here. We can do this as many times over the course of a program as we need to, and not run the risk of, crap, this time around I forgot to print the column headings. That's a big deal when we're looking at report writing. And here instead, we are calling to our subordinate module with 100% guaranteed certainty that everything that's supposed to happen in our submodule is actually going to happen in our submodule. So again, that is the great benefit of creating our solution algorithms as modular design, because we have this certainty that when I have a subordinate module, I can repeat it, and I can repeat it without guess, or without having to guess. Is, did I include every piece in here? Did I copy and paste right? Copy and paste errors happen all the time, so maybe we should go back and double check this. No need. I know that if I'm calling print page headings here, if I'm calling print page headings here, they're going to refer back to the same place, and that is going to be exactly the kind of guarantee that we need from modular design. And again, the big takeaway here is, number one, the page break. So that is going to be an indication for where and how the destination of this report is going to be. A page break essentially is, exactly like the page break is in Microsoft Word. It is suggesting that we need to go from one page to another based on, the contents of the data it is that we are printing. And here, all of these header pieces, right? These are components that we need, and we know we're going to need in order to give our reader, give our end user an indication and a validation that they know how to be able to read the data that we're putting together. This part comes first. You do the report generation, ideation. You figure out what you want it to look like first. Then second comes all of this stuff down here. Because without having an idea first of what you want the output to look like, it's going to be nearly impossible to sit there and figure out what the output might look like simply based on what your algorithmic design is stating.